Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 12th episode of Off the Cuff. As the usual thing goes, this is just a series in which I just talk about some of the stuff I've seen in the news, some of the stuff that's on my mind, and not really trying to back all of it up with facts. I do have a lot to back up some of the stuff I do say. It's mostly just me just kind of spotting off my opinions on the matters. A lot of it's opinion, not less focus on the facts, but I do try and provide some solutions, some of the sources and articles that I do talk about if possible. Now, the first thing I wanted to talk about was this whole thing that happened. It's kind of happened earlier this week and the last week. Marcus Meacham, or Count Dankula, he was set to appear on a panel show on BBC Scotland, and let's face it, we all kind of knew how it was going to go. But in case you weren't aware, of course, it was going to get cancelled. It was going to get dropped. It was going to get pressured into being dropped. Now, frankly, I was surprised that Count Dankula was that he was actually set to show up at all. That he was actually going to be on that. I was surprised that BBC even invited him in the first place. But nonetheless, the whole thing went down. He was originally they started off. They were going to put him. They recorded 2 shows, and then they edited him out. And now, if I understand correctly, they've cancelled the show altogether, which is quite ridiculous. But the craziest thing that's been going around is the articles about this. They lie about who Marcus is and his positions with pretty much no evidence. I believe the Mail, the Scottish Mail, they posted their headline was BBC gives TV job to Nazi hate criminal, without any evidence on that. And the same thing's gone for the Marcus Meacham court case. Same thing's happening there. He's had the courts just completely ignore everything that went down with him, and it's quite ridiculous. But what I think is interesting about this is just the way that it's just the constant pressure that the BBC give into. They get this pressure from groups, and they'll be told that oh no, you can't have this hateful person on there, and then they'll cancel it. But it's like, well, why'd you do it in the first place? Was that the plan all along? You know his past, you know his history. Don't tell me you don't, because you went and sought him out, and there's only one way most people have heard of him. So the fact that they went and cancelled it, either they were always planning it, or they have no principles, because they can't have thought they weren't going to get any backlash. So yeah, I just find it quite interesting, and I'm curious to see what. Meacham has said that he was expecting this as well. He thought that it would probably go this way as well. Didn't surprise him terribly. But honestly, it's not the first time the BBC has been cowardly, and frankly, we're going to see much more of this. It's still, like I said, it's a surprise that they even invited him on to begin with. But frankly, I don't think it's going to affect Meacham too much. He's been doing quite well, although it's worth seeing because he obviously got his letter from the government saying that they were going to come around and get him to pay up. So it will be worth seeing whether or not actually anything happens about that. If not, I'm sure Meacham will be fine. So another thing I wanted to talk about was it's this Twitter account I started following last week, and it's kind of seems to have risen to attention very quickly. It is the Twitter account of Titania McGrath. Now, I knew very early on it was a satire account, and I thought, okay, well, this stuff is funny, at least in my opinion, just because it's taking the complete piss out of social justice warriors. And I just thought, okay, well, I'm going to follow this account because I want to see some of the ridiculous, hilarious stuff that they say. Now, perfect examples would be here. She's posted He's posted a picture of a football team saying, you'll notice there's not a single obese player in the England football team. This kind of discrimination is precisely why the fat acceptance movement is so essential. And then there's if I go through some responses here, this guy says, if there was an obese player in the England squad, he wouldn't be selected. It's not discrimination, but sensible selection. So obviously this guy, I don't think he realizes that Titania McGrath is a parody satire account, which is honestly most of the fun, because then Titania responds, so you think fat shaming is sensible, in quotes. I suppose you also think Hitler had some good ideas. And what I love is Titania is completely parodying the way that social justice warriors just immediately jump to the extreme as their first choice. Another thing that Titania posted here was, as of today, I'm boycotting all products which were invented by white males. I urge you to do the same. Which is obviously typical virtue signaling of social justice warriors. And I don't know if this guy is related or not, but it's Michael McGrath responded, you are the product of a white male. Titania says, I'm no man's product. And he responded, your profile picture suggests otherwise, Miss Chatbot. P.S. The founders of Twitter are all white males. When will you be deleting your Twitter account? And I love that Titania's response is just, Twitter was invented by a woman called Bertha. And stop staring at my profile picture. You do not have my consent. And then Michael responded saying, I found what you're looking for, attention. It's an image with a caption. And Titania's final response here is, that meme is a form of digital groping. I've called the police. Enjoy your jail time, pervert. And I honestly, I was chuckling away at these responses, and I'm really glad I followed the account. Now, yesterday, it finally came to light who was behind all this. Now, earlier this week, I read this article called I Am Not Titania McGrath, F Off, on the Spiked Online magazine. And it was just this guy, it was written by a guy named Andrew Doyle, and he was just responding to Titania with, on the whole matter. And I thought that was interesting, and so this guy named Andrew Doyle was writing about it on Spiked Online. He was talking about Titania and he was talking to this girl named Lisa. I've got Lisa Graves in my head, but I don't think that's the right name. That's why I'm trying to search for it quickly just to make sure I had it. The title on Spiked Online was I'm Not Titania McGrath, Go F Yourself, right? Yeah, so he was talking to Lisa Graves. I had the name right there. And he was trying to ask her if she is actually behind Titania McGrath. And now it's come out yesterday that Andrew Doyle, the guy who wrote the Spiked Online article, is actually a person behind the account. And he created the account to mock today's woke culture, as we kind of guessed. The interesting thing is the name of the account. He's got from mythology. Well, not from mythology, from fiction. He named Titania of the Queen of Fairies in William Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. Because she is named after the Queen of Fairies, because I think all of this woke culture is an utter fantasy world, as Andrew said. The people who promote this hyper-inclusive culture are fantasists. So obviously he's got his own strong views there. I'll share that article as well, definitely, because it's interesting to hear Andrew's take on the matter. But I do find it quite fun to poke fun of these sort of things. I mean, I thought about coming up with a Twitter account, a satire account called Russia Watch or something like that, where I would literally just take any event that occurs and basically claim that Russia was behind all of it. Come up with these extreme conspiracy theories and convoluted reasons why Russia is behind each thing, even where it doesn't make sense. And I just thought that'd be good, because obviously I find it ridiculous that Russia has started to get blamed for just about everything. And recently I saw that Russia has been blamed for the anti-vax movement that's going around. And I've seen them blamed for, I've created a list. I'm going to do a video about this, because I find it really interesting the way that Russia gets blamed so easily and the dangers that can have. So yeah, it will be. It's definitely worth, not rushing into into blaming another country, another government for these things. But I'll go into the reasons why another time. It's definitely fun though to take the piss out of all the stuff that goes on, some of these movements, and Titania McGrath is a perfect example of these sort of hilarious ways in which you can mock some of these movements, these social justice movements. So moving on, I'm a bit late to this party, but I recently heard about the SNC Lavalin affair in Canada. I've got to say, I was quite, I was actually quite happy to hear about it. I'm no fan of Justin Trudeau, but hearing about what happened here really I was just like, oh, what an amazing outcome for all of this. So if you don't know about the SNC Lavalin affair or scandal, controversy, or whatever you want to call it, my understanding of it is basically the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, was basically trying to interfere in the decision made by the Attorney General at the time. That's my understanding anyway. And he was saying, oh, this decision she's made is going to cost jobs. And basically, it sounded like he was trying to manipulate her decision for this company. And basically, Trudeau has been... people have lost all trust in him. People calling him to step down, to retire, to basically, step down as Prime Minister. And I watched this video where he was being asked various questions. When did he know that she'd made a decision? Did he know before he met up with her? Who called the meeting with her? The meeting in which he tried to pressure her. And all he did, he kept deferring to how he's trying to protect jobs. So he wasn't answering the questions. And honestly, it was absolutely ridiculous. It's like he was on a script. He was just responding to these questions with automatic responses. And I don't know. I don't like Trudeau. He's a weak leader for Canada. And yeah, frankly, I think it's ironic to a degree that Trudeau has been found to be corrupt. So yeah, it's really funny because with all his virtue signaling, ultimately he was not serving the people. You might think he was serving the people, but he wasn't. So yeah. Now, moving forward onto another thing, these are two brief stories I saw. I don't have too much to say about the first one. This was quite awful, but basically, this 3-year-old boy was attacked outside of a Home Bargains. Well, not outside of a Home Bargains. He was attacked in a Home Bargains. A man threw sulfuric acid at him, at his face and all that, and he went running off to his mom. Now, it came out that there were 5 men involved, plus the father of the son, who planned this attack. Now, I hear that and I'm just like, what? What father would try and plan an acid attack on his own son? Like, what has to be going through someone's head to do that? Now, the only reason I've heard for this, the potential reasoning, is that they've got a custody battle going on, and the defendant, the man, the father, hoped the attack would show that she was unfit to look after him. I've got to wonder what kind of delusion goes on when a father thinks that a child being attacked publicly is going to convince anyone that the mother is to blame there, that she's unfit. If a family gets mugged, you wouldn't say that the parents are unfit to look after their children because they weren't able to prevent the mugging. An attack will happen. A parent can't really do much. It doesn't really make them fit or unfit. But I do wonder, what on earth is going on here? Because it's an acid attack is it's a very specific kind of attack. It's not something most people do. There's many things you could have done to try and convince the government or whatever that the mother can't look after the child. But an acid attack on your own son, that's just ridiculously extreme. And I don't know what the father hoped to achieve by that. And frankly, it's saddening to hear that happened. And yeah, whether or not we'll see more things like that, I don't know. But I just think that it's an absolutely horrible thing to do. And I feel for that child. And honestly, I want to know more about the guy who did it and what his reasoning was, because it doesn't actually say what his reasoning was. It just says the prosecutors argued that it was over the custody battle. There's no mention of actually here in this article why the father did it, his own reasoning. Okay, I'll link to that article down below. You can try and make your own analysis of it. This other article I came across was massively eye-rolling, ridiculously stupid. So the royal family have introduced social media rules for their accounts. Basically a set of rules under which I originally thought this was something they were imposing on the companies, but basically it's a set of rules that they will impose on people commenting on their accounts, and they will either block or report to the police breaches these depending on the severity of the breach. Now, frankly, I've read over these rules, and it is absolutely pointless. It's redundant rules. So, for example, comments must not promote discrimination based on race, sex, religion, nationality, disability, sexual orientation, or age. Have you looked at the content guidelines for Twitter and Facebook? Because that then don't allow that either. So you don't need to be blocking these people. Twitter will handle them for you. You just report the tweet. Not that I'm okay with Twitter's guidelines, but it goes without saying that's redundant. Another one, comments must not contain spam, be defamatory of any person, deceive others, be obscene, offensive, threatening, abusive, hateful, inflammatory, or promote sexually explicit material or violence. Okay, that sounds a lot like the guidelines of the existing social media websites and platforms. Maybe there's a bit of, obviously the usual line goes, who defines what's offensive and threatening and abusive? Is it abusive to say, I don't like the Queen? Is that abusive? Well, who knows? Maybe it is. I mean, I personally don't give a shit about the royal family, but who defines hate, as the saying goes, as the line often goes, who defines the hate? And I will say, the royal family are not the ones to define hate here. That's just ridiculous. But, frankly, I don't even know what to make of this. I feel like it's an attention grab or something. It's a bit stupid overall. Now, onto this last little thing. This was making the round. Everyone's talking about it. The interview discussion between Joe Rogan, Tim Pool, Jack Dorsey, and that lady whose name I cannot remember. Honestly, I don't know why I can't remember the name. It was a interesting name, really. I'll get it up. Yeah, I can't pronounce her name. Gadde. That's her surname. Gadde. So yeah, she so the whole discussion overall was pretty good. It's pretty interesting. Tim Pool really grilled him on a lot of things. Obviously, some parts he missed. That's bound to happen naturally. And really, I quite enjoyed the conversation. They did so much. They did a lot of deflection, and I know that a lot of people feel like they're kicking the can down the road. The Jack and Gadde. But I mean, I take it with a pinch of salt. The way I look at it, I believe that Jack Dorsey is genuinely trying to do what he says he's trying to do. I think he's opened himself up to these interviews, to these discussions, which is good. That's a good start. and he he says he believes in free speech, and he believes in all these things. I think he's got a bit of his own. He's got a bit of ideology that he doesn't realize. He's got some conflicts in his ideology. His worldview is too low resolution, and he's got two conflicting worldviews there, and he needs to sort them out. He needs to resolve them, the two conflicts, and because he's obviously he seems to believe that he's got free speech, but then he needs to stop some certain things from being said, and obviously those two are going to conflict. But overall, I do think it raises some interesting questions about the future of social media. And Tim Pool said this whole thing about how they're not going to be able to respond quick enough. And I do agree with that. There already is a shift in the market towards other platforms. And if things keep going the way they are, which they look like they're going to, then these new social media platforms will either become the main or will become significant. Now, people are already leaving Facebook for other reasons, and you add in any sort of censorship, and you're just it's gonna be another nail in the coffin, as they say. So, I do think it's an interesting thing that goes on, and I enjoyed the conversation thoroughly. I've watched Sargon Avocado, Carl Benjamin's response to the whole thing. I've watched the subsequent Tim Pool and Dave Rubin discussion, and the analysis Tim Pool gave post-interview was really good. I was quite impressed with how Tim has analysed it. He's also given Jack. He was quite surprised because he says that Jack seems surprised by some of these content guidelines and some of these things that have happened. People have been banned, and Jack just genuinely didn't seem to realize that. So it's and I can see it personally. I can see that happening because he's running many companies. You don't always know everything that's going on, and I know that it takes me a lot of effort to remain in the news cycle to know everything that's going on. And I'm not as busy as Jack Dorsey. So I know that if Jack Dorsey is as busy as he says he is, he's not able to keep up to date with all this stuff. And if people come to update him, if you rely on other people to update them, you don't know what they're going to choose to update him on. And certainly he doesn't. Anyway, so I think there's an interesting future ahead of us. But I will say I give people the benefit of the doubt. I don't even know if that's the right phrase to use here. I trust people at face value unless I have reason to believe otherwise. I have reason to be suspicious of Twitter, but I do not have reason to believe that they are outright lying. At least not in my opinion. That's just the way it is. Now, I think that there's a lot to be said for what they're actually going to do. We're going to have to actually see whether they're kicking the can down the road. But for the time being, I think it says a lot that Jack continues to show up for these interviews, and that he continues to make these arrangements to meet up with people. Anyway, that's all from me. I don't really have much else this week. If you want to comment or reply on anything I discussed here, you want to share your own thoughts, I'd love to hear them. I do like to hear different analyses of different topics. I'll leave links to some of the stuff below where possible. And stay tuned for the next one next week, the next Off the Cuff episode. Till then.